Movie Club Movies. Today we have a guest host. John is an artist, an illustrator, a creator, a teacher, a wise man, and good friend. He's an accomplished fine art printer and has traveled the world sharing his work and merch. His collection of VHS were a non-stop point of conversation for me and were a major building block for TMCMS and the Movie Club movie nights, screenings, and content. That collection included, but was not limited to, Basket Case and Rude Dog. Welcome TMCMS OG, John G. Welcome, John G. What is going on? Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Justin. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to be talking about White of the Eye, which is a pretty weird little gem of a movie. It's exactly the kind of thing that I think would have fit in with the stuff we were watching back then, like Basket Case, Rude Dog, and that Dracula versus Frankenstein movie with the guy whose name sounds like Dr. Dre.
But I love that you brought that up. That title sounds familiar, obviously.
It was called something like Frankenstein versus Dracula. It was pretty boring, pretty unnotable, except for the fact that the villain in it is some kind of evil scientist, and his name is Dr. Dure.
Oh, okay.
All the characters pronounce his name Dr. Dre.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
One of my big questions was, is that from your collection, the video you just mentioned?
Dracula versus Frankenstein. Yeah, I think I still have it somewhere
Okay.
in the garage.
Because
Yeah.
it also rang a bell with, was it called like Female Terminator that we rented from Scarecrow in Seattle?
I think that's a Lady Terminator.
Lady Terminator. Okay.
Yeah.
That one I also attribute to you because that was like going to Scarecrow in Seattle was eye-opening. And I'm sure they had this movie at that shop also. Yeah,
so I actually found White of the Eye on Shudder. But I do frequent Scarecrow quite a bit and do try to rent the most insane stuff that I can from there. But Lady Terminator was really a gem. But no, I'm pretty sure they have White of the Eye there. I imagine it's got some kind of DVD or like physical release. So if it does, it's probably there.
I agree, and you kind of answered a bunch of my questions. I'm glad to hear that you're still going to Scarecrow. I also think something like Vinegar Syndrome might have released this. I haven't had a chance to like go in that direction, the research I did, but also, so you just had seen this slightly recently. I had a question of, did you know of this movie when you and I were going through your VHS collection?
So I did not know about this movie. I didn't know about this movie until probably like 2 or 3 years ago when I happened across it on Shudder. It does look like there is a Blu-ray of it available. I'm on my computer right now. So,
cool.
Looks like Shout Factory has it. So I don't know if anybody's interested in buying the Blu-ray of White of the Eye. You know where to find it. But yeah, I just sort of stumbled across this, and the little one-sheeter on the streaming service on Shudder for it was, I think it was just a big picture of an eye or like a sunset or something. Read the description, and I was like, oh, 80s serial killer, slasher type thing. This will be cool. Put it on, and like immediately I was like, wait, this is like so much more.
It's striking from the beginning. I agree. It would be hard to turn the channel once you started this movie. The way you just brought that up, I agree. Do you mind if I read some reviews from TMCMS members, including yourself?
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
So, when you brought this up to my attention, you mentioned, it's unreal and I basically evangelize for people to watch it. Stereo salesman and technician who kills people in a Southwest quarry town, ! Gets into Native American shit and mystical stuff, absolutely bonkers. Your quotes, absolutely bonkers, and I love them. That's why I didn't change them. And I think you're right on top of things. Let me read a couple more. Emily, former guest of the show, she left a review on Letterboxd in 2022, so she's on top of things. It's a one-line review. I feel like I'm allowed to use the word Lynchian, as in David Lynch, Lynchian.
Yeah.
I think she's right on top of things, as we'll get into. L, friend of the show, producer, says, after seeing just the trailer, I thought the female lead was Faye Dunaway for a second. I'm down for some psycho Bonnie and Clyde. All great relationships have bad days. I'm sure they just need some relationship counseling and a nice vacation. Excellent perspective from Elle, because some of that is in there for me too. But I also love that she doesn't know much more about the movie than what she saw. Faye Dunaway substituting for CATHY Moriarty. Pretty good. Is that called like an analog? Pretty good
Yes, yeah.
switch out there. Okay, so that's
That
it
would
for
be
the
an analog,
reviews.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. That was it for the reviews. Actually, here, I have one more that I'm like putting in here because I haven't mentioned to you, John, that I just recently kind of rewatched for the podcast an 80s movie. It came out the same year as this called Slam Dance. I know I kind of mentioned it in one of our emails. This is fitting for White of the Eye. New York Times film critic Vincent Canby wrote in his November 1987 review describing Slam Dance as less interesting for its characters than for its fancy decor and images. And I think the characters in this movie are a little bit better. You may not know Slam Dance, and sorry to put this on you, but I felt like, wow, in about 72 hours, I'm watching both of these movies, and I kind of see that for both of these. There are characters and really colorful characters, but at the same time, there's faults and pitfalls to those characters. Not to just straight up criticize right out of the bat, but I'm just trying to say like what I see in the first 5 minutes of this movie, and the same could be said for Slam Dance. But the fancy decor and imagery is what I'm texting buddies about, where I'm saying the Arizona scenery of this movie and the strikingness of 1987 on set is really, really, well, fantastic, but it's really, really, it's really artistic and striking, eye-catching.
Yeah, totally, man. I would definitely agree with you. Like the film is like it feels a little bit like like the product of a madman or something. And I don't know. We'll probably talk about it later. But if you go look into Cammell, the director's life, and sort of and even the end of his life, it's pretty wild. He seems like a pretty intense guy.
You'll
Seems like he
definitely have
was
to
a pretty
tell me
intense guy, but
more of that.
kind of a mad genius thing going on. But
Yeah, I have a quote from him after these reviews. He has said, "It's an artistic study of a man's need to destroy." And I note, this is definitely TMCMS mini-series on toxic masculinity. John, when this when this comes out, I'll have a obviously Slam Dance is going to be on this list, and there's a few movies in a row that we're going to do where it is along the same lines. Good movie, but there's toxic masculinity just glaring, and that's not a downer for the movie in terms of the way we're watching them. I want to celebrate, especially I want to celebrate this car wreck, but all the car wrecks that we've done on the podcast. However problematic, there is some things to be celebrated, or some actors and creators.
oh, totally, yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that that whole element of that toxic masculinity element, I think is like one of the strengths of the movie. Like, you know, like this is probably my third time watching it. I watched it last night for this, but like third or fourth time watching it. But that moment, again, not to like jump the gun if we're going to talk about like plot or like walk through it or anything, but like that moment when the central character, yeah, Paul White, when he starts talking about his like reasoning as to like why he's been murdering these women and what
Yeah.
he's doing, it is. I think it was such a good. And this goes back to like the incredible sort of set pieces and like pieces of this movie. The way he's speaking and the progression and where it goes, his whole little monologue about like women living in misery and like being a source of evil, and he's receiving these messages from like the center of the universe that it's like beyond God and all this stuff. Just that whole monologue and how where he ends up in that is so insane the first time you watch it, and it really does sound like somebody having some kind of like schizophrenic or like manic episode or something. Like it's really right there. How it shifts from like being just sounding sort of crazy into this like vaguely and then like explicitly misogynist framing.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
past that to more of the like I'm speaking to outer space in my mind.
Yeah, and we're attributing this to a writer and director who may be dealing with mental health issues themselves, as far as some of the trivia you're mentioning and some of the trivia I came across. Let's scramble here to some of this info. I have a few more notes that just gets us there. In my scramble to stay top on what's streaming, this movie went from Hoopla to Plex after I found it on Pluto. So it's like bouncing around the streamers. It's obviously a little bit controversial, as we've heard some things from John, and I might edit this around, but I'm trying to stay on where I'm at on my notes and the way I'm hearing you. This movie looks incredible, and it is a balance of nature and man-made. And I asked you about if you knew about this when we were in classes together, because it's funny that, especially in that first minute, it is like, class, I need you to make a movie that's the balance of nature and urban, man-made structures. It's like that was the first project, the first year of college for everything. So it's just funny that I really saw that in this movie. Let me continue here. It's a good representation on one hand. However, I'm trying to get to this part because I need to make mention. The movie is incredibly horrific, terrifying, not humane, and not friendly to women or wives. This movie is freakier and scarier than Hellraiser 3, an unaired movie club movies choice, and planned screening. I never got to do it. I know John G is a big fan of the Hellraiser series.
Oh, yeah.
We talked a lot about those back in the day. Hellraiser 2, one word review from John G I just always remember is that you remember the scene and you just came up to me and you're like, the dude is like, oh, this is so weird.
Yeah, when he's going through the occult worship room, the secret occult worship room in his behind his boss's office, behind the secret door. He's like a janitor or something.
Yes.
Finds it. And there's like a bloody mattress and like eyeballs and fetuses and jars and all sorts of like
Hellraiser
and old tomes laying around, and he just looks at it all and he goes, weird.
I forever think of that. Great impression, John G. That's incredible. Okay, so I have to say, warning. This is a starter warning because this is the darkest movie we've ever covered. I give it the Street Trash Award for offensive movie club movie selection.
Hell yeah.
That's like dramatic. I have these like little blinky warnings. But what's funny, John, is I don't think you were there, but when I screened Street Trash way back at 440, and there was a big group of us, maybe you were there, just it gets into the problematic areas, and it was one of the first moments for me to go through that with public, and I looked around the room and everybody was quiet, nobody was spoken, you know what I mean? And Raj was in the back maintaining his own life. I paused the movie and I was like, is everybody all right with this? And Raj, I think he had an intercom system. He called back up and was like, is everybody all right out there? Why'd the movie stop? And I was just like, it got offensive and I just wanted to check the room. So anyway, that was a little bit of an explanation. But I love that anything you hear me say, I'm just like framing a podcast here so we can talk about it in a responsible way. But I love that you suggested this no matter what I've just said. Here's a major end cap to what you just said and what I'm trying to end cap on you is Werner Herzog making the movie about the ship coming over the mountain, or any movie with, thank you, any movie with Klaus Kinski is a movie about a madman. And while making it, the makers become a madman. And the movie reflects that. So that it may be said, the makers were madmen all along. That the project becomes a movie about a madman, made by a madman, and is madness. Madness for madness' sake. Canon Films this fall. I'm just joking like that was a trailer for Canon Films because all of their movies are like made by madmen, produced by madmen. And then like Apocalypse Now is sort of on that storyline. And what I was trying to say there is also what we're saying about the director writer is that, you know, they're probably dealing with some mental health issues, but sometimes these movies, it's like, let's show side boob and thong butt, and it's about a ninja, and it's like, you're probably a jackass. Or you fumble and you make something that makes you look like that, like maybe Coppola or Werner Herzog or even Klaus Kinski. But I just know that he also deals with that. It's like, I'm dealing with this problematic subject or actor, and I fear critics will make me a madman. I just wanted to make that felt like a really important point for me to make.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, just to the point you were making before, that the scenes of, like, in the opening in particular, these scenes of Arizona and the desert and all this, these like huge, incredible vistas, and then that like big like quarry, and how they kind of bounce back and forth between that. I think there's so much like in these external shots, these establishing shots in this film. There's so much like contrast between what you see in those moments and then what we're like inside in buildings and things. It's like it goes from these huge, expansive areas to this really tight, confined space, and you see either this beautiful landscape and this like really run down, kind of depressing town, or this big, hideous quarry, or you see like the inside of these people's homes, these like wealthy people's homes, where you do get those crazy '80s interiors with like the carpeted bathrooms and like the wild looking furniture and all the plastic kitchen and all that. But I think that sort of contrast is it's definitely something that like Cammell's like going for. It's something that he's like aware of, but I think it really makes the film sort of never get old. Like it never gets tiring watching it because you're just constantly bouncing back and forth between these like awesome vistas and then these like bizarre interiors with these like really creative shots and like terrifying things happening.
You're
But
hitting the
yeah,
nail on the head. I'm with you. Obviously, you're commenting on what I said, and I completely agree. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. A fun anecdote, though, I recommended this movie to a couple of friends of mine who live in Los Angeles, and they both dug it. But one of them, her family now lives in Arizona, and they frequently drive from Los Angeles to Arizona to visit them. And apparently, they do pass that actual quarry. So it is a real place that's still active, or at least still present in the landscape. And they did say when you pass it, it does look terrifying and depressing and ugly and weird like that.
I can imagine, and I have on my notes that it is a copper mining quarry or operation.
Yeah.
Dude, great point. It's almost like, though, what about when people drive in Los Angeles or Southern California, they see the farms of cows? How does the quarry compare?
I mean, just from their description, the quarry is it's a little
Terrifying.
depressing to see, and it's like it is. I think too, they were describing that it does sort of loom over the town like that.
I think
I
loom
think
is a
there's going
good
to be
word.
said too.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Loom is a good word because that's,
Yeah,
I hadn't come up with that word, but that's the way I saw it come into the picture. Very good word.
totally.
It's
Yeah.
looming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of this ever-present big sort of thing, right? And
Yeah.
like, there's something to be said too that there's like this kind of theme. You know, they don't they mention like the former or like sort of diminished presence of the Native Americans in the area. I'm pretty sure they say Apache. He says Apache Mountains
Yeah, I
in
feel
the
like they
area.
could have said more because I was expecting more, but you're right. They do mention a bit about Native American presence and
Totally,
history, and
yeah,
also we're talking about the looming of this quarry and the mountainous craziness going on
yeah.
with it, and it is
There's sort of
oppressive
yeah.
to
It's
the
like
town, and that's getting mixed with maybe the oppression of past culture. So it's this porridge of, well, we push them out and we treat them this way, and this industry is treating us in a way, and we're living under
yeah.
its shadow.
It gives the impression of this kind of like dead world, and then
Dead
there's this
world.
like there's kind of like a big hole in the world. You know, the
Yes.
quarry literally being a big hole, but like something just came and punched a big hole
Maybe an
in this
iris.
place. You know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Um,
I definitely think like for all the faults of the movie and how sort of strange and madness induced it is or whatever, it there is a lot like there is a lot of really striking and like interesting concepts that kind of exist like ambiently. Like throughout the film. You know, they're just sort of there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear about all of that because isn't it the ambiance that is like, well, I mean, I'm talking for myself, I guess, but I'm asking the question, can you relate? The ambiance is the mystery. For me, it's like, what am I cracking here? But I am just in this Nissan showroom from 1987, you know, this, you know, Fry's stereo from 1987, or the majority of the movie.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, there's
Ambiance.
something to be said for that too. The sort of time capsule quality of it too. That he's like this analog audio engineer, and he keeps showing off these like receivers that he's like custom built. And every time he shows one, it's like it's this big like, you know, sort of wood paneled box with like these big knobs on it. And every time he pulls it out, everyone who shows it to just goes like, "Wow, that's beautiful! Oh man, look at that!" The film opens with like, I mean, like part of the opening is like the reason, you know, two of our characters end up in the town is like their 8-track player gets broken.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like,
yeah, I love that you caught on to that because I'm already catching on. Like as soon as your text said electrical technician, I didn't watch the trailer. I have to be honest because I don't watch trailers when possible. But that 8-track scene, I was like, oh yeah, okay, so he's gonna keep interacting with electronics and devices. I'm in. We love that.
Oh yeah. I mean, the electronics, the devices, his sort of like vaguely supernatural ability to like I don't know, like diagnose the acoustics.
Figure out where he wants to plug in everything.
Totally, yeah. He's talking about where he's going to put the speakers, the big bass coming out the front end, and all that. Okay, really charming scene and performance, which I think really does add another layer of sort of like a terrifying quality to this. I mean, so this guy Paul White, right? He is this technician, and he is this sort of genius, like sound technician, and he seems to be really good at everything. And he's like this handsome, funny guy. Genuinely a really charming character and a really charming performance.
Yes.
At first, obviously.
Yes. That's written really, like, all over my notes. Is charm.
Yeah, like really, it really amps the horror up when he sort of is revealing, as we said before, like revealing his reasoning for committing all these murders. It is like suddenly you're just like, oh wow, like this guy is like completely out of his mind, like totally crazy, and like totally fully violent and like hateful.
Right. And what's wild
is lends like a really terrifying quality to that.
Yeah, and he's not only violent, but you keep bringing up he's hateful, which I had a tough time taking notes on that side of it's so smearing the charm. I mean, as real life horror can be, you know, that's why I'm writing all these notes on responsibility, whereas we're living in 2024 watching a movie like this, and it's like, yeah, there's charming people and men everywhere, and some of them are violent and hateful, or one or the other. So it's interesting that we will keep coming back on hateful, which is a kick in the nuts for this character. It's just one more like, oh, and he's a husband, and he's a father, and he's hateful. It's like, damn. Oof.
Yeah, I think it's really what makes that scene land, I think, is how like charming and pleasant he kind of seems to be around, and how he's just sort of like always on, you know?
Yeah.
He's good at singing, he's a great musician, he's, you know, a great he's good at doing what he does, he's like intelligent. But then just suddenly it all flips around. I think we do get that too in that flashback where
is it Mike?
Mike, it's Mike, not Eddie. Yes, Mike. When Paul and Mike go hunting together.
Yes.
And, we have that really intense thing where it's just sort of like out of nowhere, this like extreme violence and like terrifying event is happening.
Yeah.
When he ripped the head off the deer and smearing the blood all over. For sure. Like this film is pretty insane. So I do kind of feel like to fully understand what we're talking about, we're gonna need the walkthrough.
The sauna describes or defines the phrase white of the eye, those who look too closely into the eye of violence and how being a witness leaves a mark upon the viewer. Canon Films. Then the rating, originally X. With Marlon Brando's help, it became R. We begin in a desert, a roadster is riding past a chopper, a hawk claws at its prey, there's cactus and other hawks flying. What city is this? Golden hour, sunset, great drum beat, 80s riff, Tucson, Globe, Arizona. And then here's where it starts to get good. I've got, is this a water company or a mall? And then we go kind of follow an 80s woman, independent woman, to her car, to her own house. She's on an 80s phone. We see fruit magnets that are retro and I loved. It's an excellent house. We're going to continue this theme of seeing a close-up of an eyeball, the whites of an eye, most likely her eyeball. And now we see a goldfish in a rib, like a rib of a animal, blood, juice. And now we're in it. Now we're getting juicy. My next note, again, is short. It just says Santa Sangre, the movie, because of the blood splatter, very Jodorowsky. And, you know, that's how I'm approaching this. And I think you're right there with me. This is
totally.
the first murder. It's definitely striking.
It's extremely striking. I think that scene with the fish in particular is like, that whole first murder sequence is very like, it becomes kind of abstract in a way with that like fish rolling around in the ribs and then the like wine splashing and the fish like drowning in air basically, or like in blood.
And the color, the fish looks like jelly bean orange. The rib juice is bloody. There's red wine. There's like a strawberry colored, I don't know if that's blood or more food, but the blood is strawberry colored and it slashes and splashes. It's it's like smart is my word for it, but it's murder, you know.
Yeah, totally. And we get that crazy POV shot and all that. You know, we get it from the killer POV. That whole first sequence is really insane, and I think it really sets you up for sort of what's going to be happening, what's going on, you know. And I think it does effectively. Like a lot of times, you know, you see kind of this type of film, you get that kind of opening, and you don't really see that carried through.
I agree.
Film, you know, that kind of like presence, that kind of like, you know,
consistency.
Focus, but it's really there all the way through. It really doesn't ever stop.
Yeah. With this first murder, is somebody depressed about the encroaching industry? I see scenic views of desert plateaus and water processing plants. Beginnings of Tank Girl. Now we've moved on to meeting Joan and Paul White. Joan is played by CATHY MORIARTY, and she is being shown as being a good mom and is explaining to her daughter Danielle about antisocial behavior by slamming down a cookie cutter. There's more to this scene, and it's kind of cute. I'm doing the best I can of describing, but that's kind of like a minor scene.
She's describing she's describing what antisocial means to her kid who's gotten in trouble at school, basically hitting back another kid at school who called her a fat or something, or did something. The kid wanted her Twinkie, and the kid explains, I didn't want to give it up. The kid wanted to borrow her Twinkie. The kid wanted the Twinkie, right?
She didn't want to give it up, and then the kid, she says something like, he squeezed it. he squeezed it. She says it odd. But the living room zoom to her at the table is like a music video. I praise for how clean and well filmed the movie is for the most part. But that like zoom is my sort of first impression of the way this movie looks. It's just so like Aerosmith, the beginning of an Aerosmith music video. There's just something glam or cleaned up about this movie.
It is very of the time. It feels very much like a film made in 1987.
I agree. I think thankfully it's glossy. Because Repo Man might not be such a glossy movie, you know, but it's also in this time period. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's a few other times where it sort of switches from this kind of more conventional like horror film or drama sort of presentation back to that really glossy kind of 80s commercial type thing where there's like glamorous women walking around shopping and like cars driving like right past the camera, you know.
Exactly.
Everything's really sunny. A lot of those scenes, we'll probably get to them, but
yeah,
that kind of comes in and out of the film. And again, I think it's just another one of those like contrasts between, sort of like, I guess what we're seeing versus like what's on the surface and what's under it. That kind of thing. But yeah, it's just another one of those type of contrasts. So it seems again like a conscious choice to be doing that, and then to sort of impress the artificiality that kind of presentation of something,
I'm with you. And he is a, what are we calling him? I think you might have said it best. It's like he's a stereo technician, but it's bigger than that.
He's like a stereo technician. He seems like he installs stereos, but he also like helps design systems and like he can repair stuff. He designs systems and he customizes.
He's like magically Hollywood stereo repairman. It's like he can do much more. He is fixing a VCR with gum, and it's not a VCR. I just don't know what it is. It's VCR shaped.
Some kind of big 80s machine. It's some kind of receiver or tape deck or something.
Yeah. And we're supposed to be impressed that and I'm not knocking it. It's just it's magical Hollywood. We're just supposed to be impressed that he finished this. He put the wood grain on it and this piece of ivory, which looks like gum to me. I don't get a good lighting on it. And Paul and Joan are relaxing in the living room. Paul does a therapy sound hum, and this helps him find the right acoustics. And I'm calling this an even more artistic lawnmower man.
Yeah, I guess a little bit. Yeah. I can see where you're coming from with that. But yeah, he does this kind of weird, he like diagnoses the acoustics of the room by standing in the center of it, closing his eyes and like humming really loud to like vibrate his sinuses or something.
Right. Does he know that? I love that you know that. Like,
well, he describes it feeling like there's a tuning fork in his sinus cavity.
Okay. There's some things I missed.
After that.
Yeah,
so like, right after that scene, he says he can really see it or something like that, and he says it feels like there's a tuning fork, and he pinches his nose, and he says, "Right here in my sinus cavity."
Great.
So he's doing something with the vibration of his own skull.
Incredible.
The best place to put some big 80s subwoofer or something.
Or some heavy-duty cables separates the men from the boys.
Yes, that was a great. Yeah.
And at some
There's a lot
point,
of casual mentions of stuff like that too, like later on when they're talking about tires and stuff.
Oh yeah, and I even think maybe at some point the demographic for this is sort of like guys who like cars and stuff like that, which the Movie Club podcast is kind of, we keep covering car movies, so I can't help but kind of see like the pattern of maybe this is another one for car guys. I don't know, but at some point I wanted to mention there's a low TV in the floor level cabinet door. I mean, this could totally be 80s. I just noticed those things. It's like, LOL, I'm laughing at that. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably not this time around. I can't remember exactly the TV, but there's
another one. Yeah.
There's all sorts of, like I said, the interior shots in this movie, like everything is so profoundly 1987. It's intense. Like I said, carpeted bathrooms. I mean, even the cars they're driving. The way one of the cops is dressed with that huge turtleneck under the sport coat.
I love it.
The red beret. It's like, what in the world, man?
Oh, we'll get to Mendoza. We'll get to Mendoza. Okay, well, we're almost there because the murder has happened, and I have short notes on this where they're investigating the woman from the beginning, her house, and I have just here, the killer took a shower. Medical man, someone's, I think, mentioning art to him, and he mentions, I'm not a hippie, I'm a medical man or something like that. And then
they're talking about Picasso's work too.
Right.
They're talking about Picasso.
Yeah.
He's like, why would I look at Picasso? I ain't no hippie. And it's
perfect. I love that. Yes, it was. But yeah, they are walking through this whole house. And is Mendoza there talking about Picasso's?
I think he mentions the Picasso. Yes.
Okay.
Mendoza mentions the Picasso to the other cop whose name I forget, but is like the really grizzled looking old white guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if he's the guy, but I just know that the response is like, I don't know about art. I'm not a hippie. And I'm like, I couldn't note fast enough what he was talking about with Picasso's, but it's like, hey, as a professional here, like, you don't have to be a hippie to be a professional artist. I just
Picasso
love that.
is, like...
Yeah. It's like, gosh. Arizona, known for their artistic, craft fairs and stuff. There's an investigation starting, which we need to know, but that's not the most major of the rest of the movie. So I'll continue by saying this is another movie made by like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue cinematographer. The unexpected framing and lighting is reminding me of Motorama. I said that during Motorama. We've got Malibu Beach, tape in the case. That might be a mixtape entitled Malibu Beach. And then the sauna is saying Cathy Moriarty, who we're sort of getting introduced here to, was not approved or allowed to improvise for this whole movie. Cathy Moriarty nominated for an Oscar in a heavily improvised Raging Bull, directed by a improvised master of directing improvisation, Scorsese. Great little trivia that's crazy. Does she put her cigarette out on some kind of tray or like the actual tape? We're in their van in the flashback.
I think she's putting it out in the 8-track player because she then dumps a soda into it.
Yeah, I couldn't make it out, but I was like, what a thing to do. Like, what the hell?
I know, it really speaks to sort of the dysfunctional nature, I guess, of their relationship or interaction with each other. And then also, like, I think it is just supposed to be that it puts them outside the norm of that area since they're both from Brooklyn or whatever and have been like going down there. But yeah, it's pretty wild because at first you don't really know what you're looking at because one, it's like an 8-track player and who has seen one of those in 30 years? But like seeing it and then seeing her dump all this stuff in it, you're just like, whoa, what the hell's going on?
And they're supposed to be like together. Anyway, very rock and roll. They go to a repair shop immediately from the freeway. That was hard to believe. The intro, they do meet with maybe the older man who would own the shop and the intro of his grandson, an expert with transistors. And what I love about my notes is that I don't know anything about this movie, so I can't hold on to the characters' names at the beginning of this movie. So I'm just calling him like an intro of his grandson. How sweet a note that is, because I have no idea where this movie is about to take me. We know that we're in Globe, Arizona, which I heard is 3 miles to LA? Apache Mountains, summer hunting grounds, and we are talking to Paul White, an expert with transistors. He pulled over to get his 8-track radio fixed. This is Mike and Paul meeting for the first time. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, it's quite a first meeting. You do get a sense of who these guys are. Like, Paul walks in, he's immediately very confident and kind of dismissive of Mike. But then you get all of Mike's, sort of like his weird sort of, all his bullshit that he's spinning about, where he's from and what he knows and all this. But you do kind of get the feeling that, Mike likes this guy too, like right off the bat. It's like, oh, hey, this guy's cool. He can do this stuff. This is great. Let's hang out here for a little while. As we'll get to later on, it gets completely flipped and it's like,
Right. Complicated. I like Mike as a character, and you don't know who to trust in this movie. And I like that Mike is super friendly and super like informative or informed, or he's such a talker, but like I like that about him. And you don't always like that about characters or people you meet in real life, but there is something I like about Mike, or we like about Mike.
Totally, he's likable. Yeah.
Cool.
He kind of sucks, but he is sort of endearing in the way that he sucks. And I think it's something that I mean, for me, one of the big things in this film is that, like, a lot of the characters, they feel like real people, Like, they feel like a person you could meet, They have all the elements of someone who's, like, a real person. Like, Paul kind of has that vibe. Mike seems like, a very real sort of human guy. And I think the performances that everyone gives are very strong as well. These three central characters, at least.
You're talking to the choir. I love that. I agree totally. And I have we're back on the highway hypnosis, beautiful skylines, scenery, and we're just driving down the highway. My notes continue. Apache Chief. Mike is describing to Paul, I come from Apache Chief bloodline. Anybody can come from New York, Paul. I think I'm butchering that up, but it's a neat character point where Mike is explaining, I'm part Apache. That's pretty special because millions of people are from here and from there, but X amount of people are from Apache.
Yeah, totally. He's describing his his upbringing, and he says that he's like Italian, French, or Puerto Rican, and all these different things, because he's pointing out the color of his skin is tan. He says, "You see that color or that tan or whatever?"
Right.
And he describes what all of his heritage is, and then he says, "And my grandfather was an Apache chief."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Anyone can come from New York."
Exactly.
Which is interesting too, because it's like, it's like, is this the truth? Is he inventing this?
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting scene for sure.
I'll admit, I'm like accepting a lot of people for who they are, and I'm definitely like, I guess, compartmentalizing it, where I'm just saying like, okay, but if you murder somebody, I'm gonna pull back my emotions here. But like, I'm saying like, I like Mike, and being that a key word here is hateful in some of the crimes. It was interesting when he explains that thankfully they don't dive into maybe that part so much, but it's like, I guess, well, gosh, I'm crisscrossing here, but Paul is wearing Native American jewelry. And I think he is claiming some of that also. So I also was kind of like, okay, is he hateful towards the Native people? Is that in? Usually you might have an industry CEO be racist. Here it's like the murderer is Native American, but he's hateful against women. It's stepping stones that I don't see going anywhere when you start to put it on an academic table. Like, okay, who's Native American and how does that play into? But I wanted to buy into it. But yeah, it's a little bit confusing now that I'm talking out loud to you about it. Here's something that's not as confusing.
Is weird. Yeah, it definitely is weird that he's sort of adopting these qualities and things.
Mm-hmm.
He says he goes hunting on the hunting grounds, but are there the Native American hunting, the Apache hunting grounds? But he says that he will sell you a license to go out there and do it.
Right, and he's the one that said summer hunting grounds. Paul said that. So I also was like, okay, what's he talking about? Okay.
I do kind of think on this rewatch, I guess that sort of where that's going, or at least where it did for me, is that it's like his obsession and his like sort of presentation as this like hunter of people and all this. I think it's just sort of like one more sort of perversion of what was like sort of a sacred place for a group of people who were eradicated and displaced. In a way, I think his adopting like the face paint and the jewelry and all of that. It's just like another way to like distort and change sort of the land, the place, the world, I guess.
Yeah, and make sense of the world if you're a crazy person too, maybe. Just
totally, yeah.
I think actually, with that said, we see more of that, especially what he's yelling at Joan at the end, just cosmic stuff. But Joan leaves us with, fix the 8-track, whatever, as long as I make it to Malibu Beach before Christmas. They are on the highway. The music is Booker T and the MGs, or it sounds like that. And then I think we're segued now back to Paul in the present time, and he is finding his way in a green, sort of souped up van. We get a lot of cropped up angles on it. We don't get to really see how cool his van is, but he's headed to Dr. Sutter's to install some stereo equipment. He has to pass by the investigation for the house for the lady at the beginning. It's coincidence that they're nearby. As a viewer of this movie, we don't know what's exactly going on. And Paul is like, what is going on? They're like, oh, we're just investigating. Where are you headed? I'm headed over here to Dr. Sutter's. Okay, sir, continue on your way. And while he's in that mansion, setting up the VCR-like object, he's faking screwing it into like a jacuzzi. We have Charles Mendoza, it might be Detective Charles Mendoza, comes in and starts asking him questions. He says something about August 10th, Tuesday. I ask, is this a private pool, to tell us who Charles Mendoza is, and I can quickly do that. Art Evans plays Charles Mendoza, and from Wikipedia, his CB4 role as Albert Brown Sr., that's Chris Rock's father, the character of Chris Rock. Art Evans as Albert Brown Sr. disapproves of gangster rap, believing it to be just another fad. That's how he was described in Wikipedia. He's in so many movies, but Art Evans plays Charles Mendoza, and he just kind of starts investigating or interrogating, I don't know, off the record to Paul, as Paul is installing this VCR with the ivory customization. I don't have much more to that. It's just kind of funny, and I think Paul charms Mendoza, and I think we segue to maybe a pool. I think CATHY is there with Danielle. It does seem like a private pool, and then that's it. They just like go out of that scene.
That's where they introduce. So one, first off, very hilarious. That guy's in CB4 rules. But that's where they're walking on the street and talking about the other woman they know. They see her and they're criticizing her perm.
Let me throw this out at you. What if I told you it segues to the old man talking to Joan, and Joan says, is it true that copper bracelets are good for your sex life? It's black and white. This is where this movie starts to get so interesting. I remember a lot of it, but it was tough for me to even like write, what the hell am I seeing? I mean, I'm watching Danielle swim laps in a private pool. What for? You know what I mean? I have that the copper bracelet is just that she's talking to the old man. He says something about, I have some things I would love to record about a proper husband. Then I think Paul is hunting for mule deer, and then Paul meets the daughter with the cookie, and they give the cookie to the dog, and then the train leaves the station. So are you following that like series?
Yes.
Because take it from.
I know where we're at. It's so hard.
Go ahead.
So this movie, again, it is so sort of non-linear, or
Yeah.
like it jumps through like 3 positions in time.
Yeah.
With the flashbacks and these different things. So it can be difficult to talk about, but I will say, to its credit, when you actually sit down and watch this, it doesn't ever feel like things are out of order or
I agree.
Don't make sense.
It's digestible. But let me ask you this. Let me make this statement about the copper bracelet, and then can you take it from there, and we should get to the dog and the cookie scene. She's with an old man. It's black and white. They're sort of in the shadows of these copper mine mountains, and she asks in a mumblecore tone, is it true that copper bracelets are good for your sex life?
Right.
The old man says, copper penny, rub it for a proper husband. And then they fumble and she drops it. She picks it up, and we sort of see, maybe in a later flashback, she's rubbing it like sort of in her hand near her pocket so no one can see.
sequence of things. I'm gonna have a hard time remembering.
Yeah, go from there wherever you'd like to go.
But so the copper thing is interesting, with that being a copper mine, and then the penny, is like pure copper. And you're supposed to get a loyal. She's supposed to get a loyal husband if she rubs it.
And we spin this penny later in the movie.
We do see the penny later in the movie. It does come up in the end. Yeah, she is still holding the penny.
I love it.
Again, so that scene in the copper mine, it seems like that's the old man from the stereo shop. And
I think so too.
They are over there hanging out while Mike and Paul are hunting.
Oh,
what's going on there? So he's giving her like a tour of the mine, because I guess they're probably the only two people in town from out of town. And they're just sort of chilling and hanging out. That whole thing in the past where this sort of love triangle occurs is a little confusing, but as I said, it's never confusing to the point where you don't know what's happening. It's just sort of like odd at moments. Like, you'll just be like, wait a minute, what? Oh, we're in the past. But yeah, the
it clicks.
Thing, I don't know if there's supposed to be a connection to the mine.
We're gonna use the same watercolor wash. We're gonna use that the copper mine is going to be the backdrop here and there, and we're going to talk about copper. I get it. It's nice. Like, that scene is hilarious. Let's throw another. We find out also about Mickey Thompson Bajas, and we also, I'll fast forward us to the daughter comes into sort of Paul's workshop, and she's brought him cookies. They have the dog sort of do a trick of eating the cookie from its snout. Well, I didn't know if John G would have more to say, but I just wrote that daughter-dog cookie scene is so unnecessarily awkward. And again, I know nothing about this movie, and I think that scene now, I would add, is a build-up. John G.
Absolutely, yeah. So it is very odd at first. You're just like, what the hell is going on? But sort of, I guess what's happening there, he's giving the dog the cookies to like test if the cookies are poison.
Wow, yeah, I love it. I love that we're just gonna keep having ideas. This is great.
Yeah,
genius.
It's like he has this bizarre paranoia, and
he does.
You do see that there is this kind of like bubbling resentment, like, stirring up between the two of them. But again, this is like my fourth time watching this, so But yes, the cookie scene is very strange. That child actor sounds like a real child, but is super haunting and kind of strange.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to talk over you, but you did do peyote all 4 times.
Yeah, totally. Right?
Only kidding.
That's what it feels like.
I just was like, whoa. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. I still don't know why there's a transition scene, and I'm not trying to nitpick. This is just my notes. Gas station attendant for sure is tongue-tied in a scene with CATHY Moriarty, who I'm going to keep highlighting. I'm sort of her biggest cheerleader in this movie. I think she is an incredible actress. I loved her in Raging Bull. I just was a young lover of movies.
Yeah.
And to see her in this movie, I keep making notes about her performance, good or bad. That's just a transition scene because she does find that Mike is a mechanic at a garage in a flashback, non-linear, and I'm writing in my notes, oh, Mike is a garage mechanic. I'm like finding this out. It's exciting. Wiki, I'm going to reference, has Mike mentions that he's been in prison and that he received a serious head injury, which seems to have given him the ability to see the past and the future. He is empathetically asks Joan to promise not to tell Paul that she has seen him. And again, these are just these flashbacks informing us on our 4th view, informing us as we take notes about like, yeah, okay, right?
Hey, yeah. That scene also very bizarre because
he's chilling.
Yeah, he seems to imply that and there's another really bizarre scene with him that I'll mention in a second, which I'll mention after this. But
we want it all, John G.
He seems to imply that this blow to the head has given him some kind of brain damage. Well. That he is like, his cognition is like impaired in some way.
Yeah.
That he can also like sort of see the future, see the past, see events before they occur, and he describes this as television, as watching television in his brain, um, which I think is pretty odd. We have not mentioned one of the other cops, Paul's friend, the Asian guy, who is the son of the diner owner.
Yeah, like, yes. I should just say yes, continue. I don't know what you're about to tell me.
Right. So we'll get to the diner family in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
There is this family. There's this family of there's an Asian family. I don't really know if their ethnicity is ever like dug into.
Right.
It's an interesting tidbit in the film too, because they're kind of like hicks that live in the desert.
Okay.
But or the
Local,
son is, at least he's one of the
local
cops.
yokels.
Yes,
you know,
he's like
townies.
in the sheriff's department or something. Yeah,
Okay.
they're townies. The son is Paul's friend and seems to work for the sheriff's. It is a sheriff's deputy or something.
Yes.
But the family that's shown there, their mother is absent. The father runs this diner, and the daughter helps him run the diner.
Okay.
At a later point in the film, we see the sort of gas station, repair shop, shack thing that Mike is running now. And he has a sign up front that says cafe, so it's also some kind of diner as well, I guess.
Okay.
But there's a scene with him where it just shows this sort of location, and we can see him outside talking to the daughter, the diner daughter.
Okay. Diner daughter. Okay.
And she goes in there with him while this kind of like music plays. So again, I don't know if this is implying that they have some kind of relationship with each other, Mike and the girl from the diner.
Incredible. I have no info on that, and I found not a lot to be said about this movie being chopped to bits or anything. And this is what I loved about your suggestion, John G, is do you have any further info on that? It's great.
That I don't know,
Yeah,
but
don't know either.
I was going to say this at the
Please
end.
do.
Maybe we could talk about trivia or something, but we can go back into this, though. There's more to this.
Okay.
That actress is the second wife of the director.
Okay. Wow. I have some info on the cast.
Also some kind of writer or something as well. But, yeah.
Juicy. Sorry, I cut you off. What about the writer?
She's some kind of writer, novelist or something as well.
Okay.
I forget exactly what her career in that was, but yes, there's a bit more with him and her and all that we could talk about toward the end of this once we discuss the film. But
we just got to maybe Paul's first encounter with Vern's wife at her mansion, the locally famous Ann Mason.
Yes.
I think she's wearing furs, and I think we see Joan is wearing fur. I think that there are times where this movie is shooting a couple shots, and then not slowly, but in terms of describing it, it's like slowly we get to the scene. Because it's like, I think Joan is wearing a fur, headed out, but right now we're about to watch Anne, that the furs are mirroring. It's like what Joan is doing and what Ann Mason is doing with Paul, who I still think is like a cable guy. Definitely showing more of these flashes of the whites of eyes. Yikes. You is what I felt like. This lady has a satin nightgown, a fur coat, 1,000 count sheets, a down comforter, and a laxed waterbed. She is the wife of a stupid hillbilly Vern and is really going for it. She is showing him a tattoo. Do you have any guesses on the tattoo?
That scene, I guess a tattoo makes sense. That scene was odd to me too. That scene's crazy where she lifts up her sort of nightie.
Sensationalism.
She says, we see it from behind. She lifts up the nightie. And she says something like, what do you think? And he's like, oh, it's a work of art. And she says, like a Dominican guy did it or something like that.
A Cuban kid.
A Cuban kid did it. The Cuban kid.
Yeah, not that that matters, but...
And I'm like, so, God knows what's going on underneath there. It's
right.
A wax job, a piercing, a tattoo, who knows? And yeah, she is really going hard trying to sleep with Paul. She is really, really aggressive about it. It's kind of implied that it's happened before. And yeah, her husband is at once like some dumb hillbilly, but also like I think it has something to do with the quarry, so that's why he's like incredibly wealthy. Because they
That
have that
tracks.
huge house.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, there's more about Ann Mason, and John and I are such gentlemen. This lady is so gorgeous. She's got a whole lot going for her, but she definitely is, in the trap of seducing. Sorry, a plug just fell. Okay, we're back on track.
Nice.
I'm sure she's a gorgeous woman through and through, is all I was trying to get at. Out of that scene. Was it from Motorama? Did you ever see the movie Motorama, John?
I don't think so.
Okay. Our hero's Gus. But did he continue after Motorama, later becoming a tattoo artist? Now, this was a young man who may have been a kid. He may have been a Cuban kid, and he may have taken to tattooing later in his career. I didn't know if John G would have known that movie. That's okay. I'm trying jokes, John. I tried jokes.
No, I've not seen Motorama.
Okay.
But, I will check it out. But yes.
An added escape for me here out of that scene, I'm trying to get out of that scene, is that Paul says, instead of hooking up, he asks for a beer. And now we go to, allow me to say, John, I'm going to tell you that Paul is now playing the piano and singing.
Yeah, so he's playing the piano and singing, and I believe in this sequence here, Joan brings him a beer.
Yes.
Also. I also noticed too this time around that all of the songs that he is singing are like old country songs about a man being left by a woman.
Okay, some might even call that blues.
Yeah, like a sort of old blues-timey songs. But yeah, he's playing the piano with his daughter. They're talking about various things. He's talking about like other jobs he has to do, sort of setting up for like where we're going to go next and have the whole sequence with the police and everything. They mentioned the set of pots and pans, which are also, I believe, copper. That Joan has ordered a set of pots and pans from somewhere. They've been delivered there to the store. She wanted Paul to pick them up while he was out at work, but he forgot. Because instead of doing that, he was at Anne's house checking out whatever work she had done. But yeah, again, another copper appearance. Again, could feel like some kind of weird tangent, weird thing to focus on, the pots and pans, but the copper is there. There's clearly some kind of thread connection being built there. What it is not perfectly clear, but I can, again, just because of the nature of this movie, what is the next scene that happens after the piano?
Explained it great. I got the top of that scene. Paul plays the piano and sings I'm Charmed. Some of the sheet music I saw on the mantle was Garfield, Danny Elfman, and the Danny Elfman sheet music had a pretty rad cover that kind of looked like Tattoo You by the Rolling Stones, but it was Danny Elfman sheet music. Very rad, of course, very rad for the time. He says, I had to go to Tucson to see a guy, typical guy. Joan is saying, didn't happen to be a cop, you know. And then at this moment, CATHY Moriarty is glowing. She looks radiant. She's a gorgeous blonde woman. And she's got a great crop top and like sort of just a bohemian dress. And she's also like sort of maintaining Paul, but getting Danielle ready. There's probably like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And she's reminding me of Shelley Duvall, R.I.P., in The Shining. And as my computer hums off, Danielle is, can you guess, John G? Danielle is Danny from The Shining. Okay, so our art degrees, our engine is moving here.
Okay.
Paul's piano song goes like this. Step right up, come right in. If you'd like to take a friend to a lonely house we once called home sweet home.
Yes.
That's what he's singing. And Joan mentions, did it happen to be a cop? A guy, an officer bulldozer called. And somebody says some things that just might chill you from the bone. And then now I've got Stu, son of the restaurant owner, donuts and meat and coffee shop. Stu. Must be drunk. He's eating a piece of chicken, dressed in his police uniform, and he eats the meat of
Yes.
the chicken clear off the bone, like in the cartoons. You're welcome. My notes open up after this. I have a lot more notes. You were trying to find Stu, and here we are. He's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
We've seen their restaurant, and now we've got Stu giving monologues. I love Stu. I love his character. I love the actor. John, holler at me. What else am I missing?
Stu is pretty great. You know, you have that scene in the diner is great for it for a lot of reasons. It again feels very real in a strange way. The diner itself is a great little set, but this is where we see the daughter, where we see Stu, I think this is also where we learn that Stu has similar tires to Paul.
Right.
And there's a great moment there where he says that he has, I think, the same kind of tires, and then he says the big ones, like larger than what Paul has, and he goes, "I got mud where I live, Paul." And I think that's another little moment, like another little one-line thing that is akin to that whole, the heavy-duty cables separating the men from the boys. It's like another subtle brag.
I agree.
From someone, yeah.
And it's also like Joan is saying somebody named Bulldozer. Like, we're also sort of like, I don't know, playing this mumblecore card of like, we're trying not to like really, I don't know, be linear, and it's almost like these moments about nothing. But, we're saying toxic masculinity or whatever, or ignorance towards culture, but they're also handed to us in a sort of, I feel like it's a moment about nothing. Because
it's like pure characterization. We just get these characters talking to each other, so you can kind of get a feeling as to what they're like.
Yeah, the line you mentioned, I felt like I received it. Stu is kind of mumbling that. It's like, yeah, I've got the big tires, not the extra large. The extra larges. Yeah, I've got, and I'm like, this is muddy. This is as muddy as your backyard, bud.
Yeah.
Before we get too far, I'll throw out that Fred Hoy is played by David Cho or David Chow. He is an extra in the original Planet of the Apes. He is also in the Ski Bum 1971. He didn't do much big time work, but I think he's Stu's father, if we're on the right track here. And Stu is played by Marc Hayashi, and he is a new TMCMS superstar. He's incredible. He is in Angel 1984. He is in The Laser Man 1989. He is Taro in Karate Kid 2. I love that movie. I don't know exactly who he is, but there's a lot of rad dudes in that movie. And then he is probably maybe most known for being in a movie called Chan is Missing from 1982, directed by Wayne Wang, the director of Slam Dance and Joy Luck Club. But Slam Dance and White of the Eye coming together again, and I think Marc gets it. He gets a movie like this. He gets it. He knows where he's at. Praise for Marc. Praise for Stu is where I'm coming from.
His performance is great. Yeah, he's very charming performance. Very fun to watch. Every time he shows up, he really gives the impression of this kind of like well-meaning but kind of like dumb guy. If that makes sense.
Sure, the eating of the chicken. It's
he always
brutish.
Has this kind of like sort of confused or sort of like vacant sort of look to him. He's always
and he's young.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's the pizza guy,
like,
if I may say. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it feels like a guy you would know, or like a guy who'd be like a coworker or something.
Yeah.
Right? Like feels very relatable, very human character and very human-like performance. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're even trying to lead us on by like, hey, he could be the best friend, right? And people with best friends don't go around murdering people, right?
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, you okay? Well, here I am saying wild, wild. The perspective, and I guess this is special because it's shot mainstream. This movie is strange. I guess we've gone down this rabbit hole before. On mute, on a hotel TV, with the window open. This movie is shot like it's Jerry Maguire, and at times shares characteristics, but is not. It's hollow in places. Movie club watches keep those loose ends together because, if nothing else, it's charm. It's what I hope. Creative. And supposedly, the excitement of watching entertainment. It's a night out, so to see cringe visuals, well shot, well lit, I am on board and will laugh and reference for a week. Jerry Maguire goes to Hall of Fames. Joan, Paul, Mike, and the White of Eyes goes into Laserdisc players, lol. What I'm saying there is, I'm definitely reviewing that we're saying, it's a wild watch. The movie looks great. It deals with controversial, maybe taboo subjects, obscure subject matters, but it looks great. And so I'm just reviewing. Stu is flossing. Stu is powdering his pits with, I think, Joan's sort of makeup setup. And this is, again, like just a moment of nothing. But we love Stu, and he ate a bunch of chicken. When Joan wakes and her eye is looking around and the camera only has her diamond eye in the frame because she's beautiful, Paul is shot from like a sexual angle. So she's woken up and the frame only has a young woman's beautiful eye, as if, I don't know, as if it's a flower, but she's looking around, so it's odd. And we see Paul like upside down, almost sexual, almost BJ, but
Totally. Yeah.
but not. We're just having 80s fun. Mike is hiking, and then here I am. I'm getting caught in the web here, John. Mike is hiking. This would be amazing. I want to be there. I want to talk to Mike. I want to hike. I want to hike with Mike. I want Mike to be on Kevin Nealon's YouTube channel, hike episodes. Mike is wearing Billy Crystal's Mets hat over too much hair. A B-movie specialty, a canon movie specialty, and I have no idea what's in store for Mike or me. But that's not even we don't get the full story, John G. Now, we are with Joan and her girlfriend, and we see Lisa. And I just have the ADR written out here. So after I say this, you're free to heckle me or say whatever you'd like to say. There's Lisa. What? What? There's Lisa. Oh, hi, Lisa. Hi, back. Whatever. She's saying it that way.
Yeah.
Those are my notes. But I also remembered that is like those scenes I love where it's just like, this is music. This is ADR, terrible, but it's music to my ears. I just loved it. I wonder how much makeup she bought today. Oh, you're so bad. LMAO.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, keep going. No, let's hear it.
I mean, you're loving this scene though, right? It's great.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's great.
Crummy,
It's
crummy hairdressers in Arizona. Get back at us, podcasters. Ann Mason. Jones says something like, everybody's trying to look like Ann Mason. And I was like, I gotta Google who Ann Mason is. Is she like a 1980s, game show,
totally. Yeah.
Celebrity?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. So they're out and they're shopping, and they do see here. Ann Mason is, of course, the character Ann Mason in this film.
Yeah.
It is a little confusing, I guess. This time around, I'm like, okay, I knew exactly who they're talking about. But yeah, they say something like the Ann Mason lookalike contest or something?
Yes.
So subtly, every woman's like Anne is sort of the top lady in town, right? She's rich, she's hot, everyone knows who she is. But I really do like this scene. This is kind of goes back to what we were saying before about those kind of really glossy, like 80s commercial sequences that
Yes.
feel like a mall or a car showroom or something. Because it's just them walking around. It's like close-ups on their lips and their nails and like the hair. You can see the hairdresser at one point, and he has like, you know, the blonde dyed hair, the earring, and the necklace and the goatee and everything. And we just sort of quickly cut around between all this stuff and hear them speaking just in ADR. I love it. I think it's great. It's one of those things where you're like, you know, artistic choice versus necessity. I can imagine probably be pretty hard to get sound in that environment, but it's just a really cool sequence, and it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things that could be really flat and boring and dead, but the little flourishes the director and the crew are putting in this movie really make even just little scenes like that really engaging and really like exciting. And they also kind of like, I feel like a lot of these types of moments, they come around and they sort of wake the audience back up, right? Like you're sort of like in it, you see something like this, suddenly you're like, oh, okay, whoa, what? Like it forces you to sort of think in a different way for a bit while watching the film. But yeah, I do love this sequence where it's just them gossiping, like just audio of them gossiping over footage of them like waving to her and smiling.
It's a gem.
Totally.
So, you know, I'm sure there's flashbacks and stuff which makes notes tough, but eventually we get to think it's Lisa. We get a close-up of, you know, pretty eyes and a close-up of nail polish on toenails. The scenery is a true gem of this movie because I think we're in her bathroom, her apartment, and it's all done up. I will have to make note of the set decorator and stuff in the cast. We're kind of, I think again, this is like a step. We're getting to the full scene, but we just see that scene start. Is that Joan pry bars the green van's tires. I mean, again, is that because he's at Vern's house? I'm kind of like, who actually owns the green van? Is that Joan? But she like pops his tires because she's kind of figured out he's cheating on her. Is he at Vern's house? And then quickly, just to keep moving, Lisa is being stalked by the male gaze, and I'm trying to say like in bodies. I feel like the male gaze is stalking her because I was able to just see her whole apartment and all the colorfulness. He's got baseball grip gloves, and that's a good detail. Here I go saying, why was Lisa's death such a production, LOL? Why was Lisa's death like an art installation? I was like, hold on, Lisa. Wiggle like a glowworm, Lisa. Hold on, Lisa. Poor Lisa. Because you might want to describe what happened, but we're into the murders. John G, do your worst.
Yeah, I'll give you my little rundown here, and then you might have some better notes in terms of like what specifically is like said. Yeah, this sequence is crazy. I got the impression that this is happening in place of him killing Anne. We do later learn that Anne has left town with her husband to go to Florida or something, I think.
Yeah, see, some of that info is my mumble. Like I always note in the last like 5 movies, it's like there's a lot of mumbles in these perfect guests for this movie that he suggested run because I'm gonna miss those things. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so like it is again. It's a little confusing. It's a little like obtuse, but yeah. So Lisa is trying to look like Anne.
I see.
And so has a similar sort of presentation to Anne. Anne has left town with her husband, but when Paul was going there to cheat with Anne previously, she told him to park his car. In a discreet location near the property. So he's done this. Joan finds the car, pops one of the tires, and this comes into play later in the police interrogation scene. But I'll wait till we get to that point to talk about that. But the part with Lisa is insane. We get the POV again, stalking into the house. But then the way that he kills her is so bizarre and frightening and crazy. He essentially, like, he just runs into the room while she's in there. She screams and freaks out. He grabs her, physically flips her over so that he's holding her up off the ground with her legs in the air and her head pointed down at the ground, and then slams her head against the ground.
Yeah, it's like a bump, and it's like, thankfully it's not brutally disgusting, but it's like, I got it, and it's, Lisa.
Crazy. It's so crazy and it's so violent. It's like, oh my god, and so shocking. You're just like, whoa, what the hell? I think mostly just because I've never seen something like that in a film. It's not really something you would.
It's a
Like
wrestling move.
immediately. Yeah, it's like a wrestling move. Yeah. Basically, like tombstones her.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
like
so.
tombstones her in the bathroom, and then immediately starts tying her up in like a carpet or curtains.
Well,
or
I think,
something.
yeah, I mean, it's like a big towel. It's everything is very bright. She's wearing a bright blue, like romper robe, and she's wrapped in a bright pink, fluffy rug or towel. And then he uses, sort of magenta wiring.
Yeah, absolutely. So this whole sequence too, like, it's one of the things that kind of catches your eye in that first like murder sequence in this film, is how
Right.
like colorful everything is and how like
Yes.
bright and poppy everything sounds. Everything looks, I guess, and sounds, despite it being this like really horrendous, like horrific murder.
Exactly. That's
But
why
yeah,
we're
so
covering
he
it. It
tombstones
looks
her.
great. It looks incredible.
Yeah. So what happens here is like this elaborate death sequence. He tombstones her, surprise tombstones her, knocks her out completely, wraps her up in this big heavy towel and all this stuff, ties her up in it, and it's all bright pink. And this is I think this is the carpeted bathroom sequence. Um, Carpeted bathroom, already insane. The tub is like that magenta color or whatever. He fills up the tub and then puts her in the tub under the water. But then to stop her from getting out, he steps on her, puts his foot down on her chest to hold her under the water, and holds a mirror up to her face.
I'm frightened. I'm with you, but I'm
Totally,
frightened.
so that she can like see herself die. And this is again, I want to mention this now because I'm going to bring it up later at the end when we talk about some of the things about this director, some of the interesting little tidbits that I've learned.
That's freaky.
Yeah, you might know what I'm talking about. So it's.
Go ahead.
But yes, so yeah, that's basically where this goes, and
Totally.
It does take quite a while, and it is really, really like
colorful.
It's colorful, and despite there not being any like gore, it's still really shocking.
Right, and it's
really like disturbing.
With this death, it was like, well, I do see why this movie wants to be different. It's saying this guy's got a different clock in his mind about why his motive of murdering, and there is a cover of this movie, I think on Letterboxd, where the mirror is showing the Lisa character. So once I saw that after viewing, I was like, okay, so this is notable. This is an art installation, JustinJustin, and the critics thought so too, supposedly, just from seeing the way the reaction is. We can take it from there because there's more thrills coming. There's more TV. Sorry.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Let's keep going. There's more TVs being watched on the ground many times. I have noted. I don't know if Lisa's doing that. We're moving forward where Joan is interacting with Paul, and my note is the way Joan is handling Paul and their relationship is like Cathy Moriarty was like, follow me, I got a few relationship stories to tell. Although I found out she wasn't allowed to improvise, so the director and writer may be Mad Men, because it's not from who I would think this brassy Hollywood blonde, had to handle these idiots throughout her life, is the way she's handling the rockiness of Paul's relationship as that's gearing up right now. Charles Bulldozer shows up with Paul in his long johns. Paul is sleeping in a supply closet because his rocky relationship with his wife thinks he's cheating. And again, I don't know what to think, so I'm just speculating. But it does look like he's cheating.
This happens before the interrogation of the police, right?
Okay. And if I've missed interrogation or something, it's because I got caught up in it. And I tried to catch myself, but it didn't happen every time. My next note is heinous homicide. And then it continues by saying, I was confused about the flat tire. because every
Yeah.
actor has coke mouth mumbles, and I'm not hearing names clear enough.
Yeah, so the police interrogation, I think, happens before this, if I'm remembering correctly.
If you would
Basically
like
what
to
happens
talk
there
about it,
is-
please talk about it.
Yeah, so basically what happens in this sequence, it's kind of confusingly shot because at one point Joan is on one side of the two-way glass watching Paul, and then the next she's in the room with them talking to Paul. Totally. So there's a police interrogation that happens, and in the interrogation, basically what's going on is the police are like, "It has to be you. You must have killed this woman. The tires on the car. You're out, and all this." He did in fact kill Lisa.
No!
And smashed his tires. Yes. So Lisa's dead. The tire was slashed. What happened though was by slashing the tire, she has inadvertently given him an alibi because he says then that he was in fact sleeping with Anne or went there to see Anne, and he had to change that tire. And so Joan chews him out and is, calling him a good old boy and says, that she's not just some dumb housewife and he can't, trick her or bamboozle her in this way. But the important thing is the slashed tire is what gave him the alibi for this murder.
Those slashed Mickey Thompson Bajas.
Mickey Thompson Bajas give him an out on this.
Damn, I actually wish I knew what that meant. I wrote it as if I knew what it meant. Sunsets and shitheads, got it.
Sunsets and shitheads, yes, because he says that he was out there watching the sunset or something as well. Yeah, maybe he doesn't say that he was sleeping with Anne, but yes, he basically changing the tire that was slashed gives him the alibi for the cops for the murder.
That's fine. And continuing, I wrote, Vern's wife is Ann Mason, so see, I'm discovering things. Ann Mason is like pre-internet local Kardashians, right?
Yes, yeah.
The girl
like
to be.
Local figure of gossip, yeah.
You want a sandwich? No thanks, Harold. Harold the cop was tough for me to hold on to. What the hell was Harold up to? He's a chubby fellow.
He's a chubby fellow.
It's okay. It seems like he had some exposition for us. He reminded me of guys in sitcoms around this time, and I just couldn't hold on to him what he was telling me. He has a comic beat where he's like, "Guys, do you want a sandwich?" "No, Harold." Bye-bye, Harold. You know what I mean?
And there goes Harold, yeah.
A better observation here, maybe, I would love to hear your observation on this. Danielle has bracelets and necklaces with colorful plastic charms, 80s charms and doodads. Personally, we would get these at the flea market in this small town I'm back living in, especially in 1987 when I was going through art school. I have to say these are incredible. They could be 3D printed now, but they would be one color, two color, or three color plastic as if they were 3D printed. But this is 1987. Did you notice this on Danielle? Do you know these items from thrift stores?
Sort of the little you would get them out of those. I don't even know what you'd call it, toy dispensers or whatever at the drugstore.
And sometimes,
being
that this is Arizona, I bet the flea market out there was extensive, and I'm sure there were all types of people putting that together. I mean, so if you liked music, you could get a guitar, a saxophone, drums. I had headphones that were these little plastic headphones. If you had a G.I. Joe, I would put them on my G.I. Joe, and they wouldn't match up. But I don't know, John. It's just one of these retro moments that we can say they don't make shit like that anymore, but also we kind of could with 3D printing. It would be kind of rad.
We could go back to doing it. I mean, I feel like there's even a market for it now. But
yeah.
I know what you're talking about. It's another one of those sort of time capsule.
Yeah, time capsule.
Qualities of this film. It's just all that little stuff. The clothes people are wearing.
When I listen to podcasts and they go off on that, I'm like, yes, no one has talked about those plastic thingies. you know, for 30
You're
years.
talking, like, the little bracelet type things. And all
Yeah,
that?
or whatever a podcast might talk about.
Machines that's like, you know, like the little
Yeah.
wrestling guys,
And
or like a little alien.
I don't know.
And it's just like a little hard, immovable plastic.
Yeah, all these little odd things.
Yeah,
they're great to look back as we move away from it. I mean, you and I both have a degree in paper. And when was the last time you used paper? You know, I'm writing down things on Post-it notes, and it's like people don't even really use that anymore. Behind the scenes there, just why my brain is working the way it is. Looks as though Paul stole Joan from Mike, and Mike came for a confrontation with Paul, shot out one of Paul's devices. This is like in Paul's, I don't know, studio or workshop, a dark flashback that informed me on a lot, because it's like Mike was with Joan on this cross-country traveling, and in that same film filter, Paul is hooking up with Joan. And Mike walks into this, and Joan and Paul are on the ground doing it. Is that the last time they all saw each other? Mike takes a shot at like a speaker or a light, and that's a scene. And my next note is the killer is fucked up. They took out Lisa's intestines somehow. So I think we're having a flashback of poor Lisa dead on the floor. Before we go any further, here's my warning for a dead animal. Paul has a dead deer, I think is the sort of climax to Mike and Paul's hike, which I would have wanted to be on, and now I'm redacting that. And I'm seeing what Mike is seeing, that he went out and shot a deer. And I think Mike was like, I thought we were going to smoke some cigarettes and talk about baseball, like they do in City Slickers.
Yeah, totally. Like, so this scene with the three
John
of them
G, help us out. Ow, ow, ow. Yelling for you on the hike trail, dude. What the fuck?
Yeah, this hike turns nightmarish very quick. It does look very pleasant. It's such a beautiful place they're in too, and you're like, oh wow, look at that. So this hike scene is supposed to, I think, chronologically happen before the confrontation where Paul and Joan are sleeping together. But yeah, so basically we see Paul and Joan sleeping together in a flashback. Mike walks in, he puts a gun to Paul's head, then doesn't shoot him, and instead shoots some kind of speaker or something. But then we get the hike flashback, and it's sort of the final part of the hike. We see the earlier part of the hike, you know, it's just them hanging out, and Paul has this custom compass that he's made that Mike thinks is really cool.
Tell me about the compass.
It's like a mother of pearl inlaid compass. It's just a very nice looking compass.
It catches Mike's eye immediately.
Yeah, and Paul says that he's done the inlay himself. I think it just further goes to show that he's like this, you know, self-sufficient
craftsman.
Yeah.
I have a photo grab of Paul handing Mike the compass, two men's hands clasping together. You son of a bitch.
Absolutely, you son of a bitch. Yes. Yeah. You son of a bitch. And then their muscles ripple and all that.
Right.
But basically, we cut right back into where we were. Mike is sitting there on this big rock, and Paul just sort of walks up out of the wilderness with this dead deer on his back and flops it down. And you do really get the impression from Mike that this got way too real, way too fast. He's like, "Oh man," and I believe this is when the crazy thing happens, where Paul starts to twist and curl and like break this deer's head off of its body.
Fucked up.
Yeah, really insane. And this whole sequence is crazy too, because it just cuts from Paul sort of manhandling the deer, and you just see the antlers and stuff and hear the snapping and twisting. And it cuts back and forth between that and just like this close up of Mike going like, "No, oh my God, oh Jesus, Paul, no."
I love Mike.
Yeah,
Mike is great.
Like, whoa, and you know, we're right. I'm right there with Mike. It's like
crazy.
All of a sudden, you're like, wow, you just killed that deer, and then it's like, oh my God,
yeah,
what the hell? Like,
and it's these moments.
Holy crap, you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, and it's these moments where it's like, and you think this is okay, and welcoming.
Totally. So yeah, Paul's doing this, and yeah, he rips this thing's head off. He tears this animal apart with his bare hands, which is super intense. He starts smearing the blood on his face, also super intense. Then Mike's sort of whimpering and just shocked. He grabs Mike by his hair and his head, and he starts saying, "What am I going to do with you? What am I going to do with you?" And then he kisses him full on the lip.
Well, here we go. Movie club, movie listeners, because this movie is doing that thing where it gives us a step of the scene and then finishes the scene later on. John is right on top of it, but they do cut it up. That climax of the embrace and the kiss, I mean, technically happens later in the movie. To me, where it was just like, holy fudge. This movie, now that we're opening it up, it's epic in its vignettes.
Totally.
With every vignette is just like, and then we cut away, and you're like, Mike and the deer, whoa. Back to the movie again, going from Twin Peaks to Canon and back again. And I don't know where we're going. Joan is getting sick in her bathroom.
The hunting thing, the only thing I was going to say is just, to what you're talking about opening up this movie, the movie seems kind of small in that it's just about these three people in this small town. One of them's a murderer. But
the style seems minimalist at times.
Yeah, it is very, very ambitious, in its scope.
I agree.
In terms of, timeline, characterization, writing.
Less than Dune, but ambitious.
Yeah, maybe less ambitious than Dune, but I mean, I don't know. It's pretty intense. It's pretty wild. But yeah, let's keep on rolling down. Yeah, so Joan's in the bathroom. She's throwing up.
CATHY Moriarty made me believe that was a real puke.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's amazing in this movie. We didn't really talk about it too much. The interrogation sequence, the monologue she gives about the whole not being a dumb housewife thing, where she's kind of just berating Paul, is really amazing. And she goes in and out of all these different emotions and things. It's really good stuff. But yeah, this puke, very believable. The sort of how long it takes, the noises she's making, sort of everything about it.
And we don't even see the fake oatmeal, what
we don't see
the production would give her. So I'm just like, oh, she's puking. She's Oscar nominated, dude.
That's an Oscar-worthy vomit.
Yeah, she's like, I came here to work. Well, from there, she simply finds a bowl embedded into a wooden bathtub cradle or fixture to hold a bathtub or jacuzzi.
So,
and inside there,
she actually sees a little bit of something sticking out from underneath.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what prompts her to pull the bowl.
Is it like floss or something?
I think it's like rope or twine. It's some kind of
Yeah. I'm pushing ahead, but feel free to include what I don't include.
Yeah. So
I call it.
She pulls over the tub.
Yeah, and she finds what I'm calling human sausages.
Yes. Yeah.
What would you?
So, yeah, it's a little confusing at first. I mean, this is like viscera and gore in bags, but it's very hard just to tell precisely what you're looking at. She pulls this little soap dish thing off the top of the tub and looks inside, uses a lighter. They have a big bowl of lighters. She pulls a lighter out, puts it down in there, turns it on so she can see what's going on to make some light. And yeah, it's filled with these plastic bags that have, I think, like a human head and like parts of women in them, possibly parts of Lisa.
Lisa.
Yeah, we have Lisa reappearance, and yeah, she's in. Parts of her are in bags, hidden in this like bathtub cover thing. And of course, Joan's like, "Holy shit! What? Oh my god!" But yeah, right after that, what happens?
Well,
Where do we go from there?
we're going to get to a juicy moment here, but do you know who's not in those bags? Is
Who?
Joan's friend, Carry On. Carry On. Or
Yes.
Marianne sometimes, actually Carrie Ann. But
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm Justin from the Movie Club Movies podcast, and I catch on to these little things where it's like Joan is saying, carry on, but she's actually Carrie Ann. And the mumbles continue. I'll stop myself
Yes.
there.
It's the friend. It's the friend she was with earlier.
Shopping.
Gossiping about Lisa. We have shopping, yes, with the ADRC.
I think she tries to tell her. I don't have much more.
She calls her and asks her to come and pick up Danielle, the daughter.
You're right.
She asks her to come and pick up the daughter, and her friend says that she says they're going to go see. She's going to go see Gone with the Wind with her boyfriend, her husband, whoever, her partner. Yeah. So she's like, "Oh, I can't come now," and then she says, "Okay, well, try to come later or something." But this is an attempt just to get the kid out of the house.
After this, I'm finding out, oh no, Paul says putting people out of their misery. Sheer misery. Paul White,
yes,
you are the one, is frightening.
Yes. This is this is the sequence where I think he's out.
Whatever you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, after the call, he's home, he's with the daughter talking to her. He's doing something, and to sort of not alarm the daughter, Joan confronts him and says that she found something in the bathroom, and he just goes, "Oh yeah, that." He's like, "I was going to tell you about that, but I didn't think it was a good time or something." And then later, the two of them are in the bedroom, and that's when he starts describing his reasoning for murdering these women, and it is totally nuts. If I remember correctly, he starts out by saying that these women are living in misery and that he is setting them free, and then Joan starts freaking out and crying and being like, "What, you're like killing these people? Like you really have been killing them?" And he's like, "Yes." And then he starts describing that someone was telling him to do this, and she's like, "Who, God or something?" And he's like, "No, this is way bigger than God.
It's light years beyond God. Is this The Shining?"
God. Yeah, so it's light years beyond God, and then I think from this point, this is when he's giving this big monologue that is just this sort of manic, crazy person rant, and it starts to turn vaguely misogynistic, where he starts saying that, like, women created some kind of like fissure in the world, or like some kind of split from normality, and it goes back to the Bible. You're talking about God, and then he's talking about like the female of the species, and then he's like, "Oh, it's light years beyond God. It's like a diamond, and like in the space, and I'm like speaking to the center of the universe." I cannot do this monologue justice.
No.
It is so intense and bizarre.
John, it'll set you on a murderous rampage if you do. But it's one of those moments where we've already talked a little bit about the director and all these things, but I don't even want to hold him to it. It's just one of these moments where the character is so, is evil. And I don't care what they have to say. I mean, just in terms of my field trip on this podcast, where it's like, I tuned out because it is so crazy. It's beyond God. Light years beyond God. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
and now with what? A machete, a car? What are you doing? Entertain me. And I don't want to hold that the director is a madman, but it's also like, hey, this writer went off on it. It got crazy.
Yeah.
Because to add to what you're saying, pardon me, sorry. He says he's not hearing voices, but something said he's chosen to be the one. I don't know. Something told me. It's like, okay, I got it. It's between loose and tight. And I add, this is Lawnmower Man and Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And Buffalo 66. Joan, get out. Where is Carry On? Because I think he goes from telling this monologue that John is telling us about to slashing the mattress. Is that right?
No. So
okay.
he describes all this.
Yeah.
And says all these crazy ass things. You know, you're
Yeah.
just like, whoa, what? And I did the opposite of tuning out during this. First time I saw this movie was totally transfixed by this scene.
You wrote a movie yourself.
Yeah, I was like, this is nuts, man. Like, what the hell?
It is.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because again, I think this speaks to the grounded nature of this. This sounds a lot like what some insane person's reasoning would be.
Yeah.
For doing these kind of things, you know, it doesn't really totally make sense, and it has all these like red flags and hallmarks of, you know, like I said, this sort of these weird misogynistic ideas, and you know, hearing voices and delusions of grandeur, all that stuff. But yeah, so this happens, and then they're crying, and Joan is basically like, okay, well, we're going to try and figure this out. And he says, I'm not going to hurt you. I would never hurt you or Danielle. I love you. All this. And it goes over well, I guess. They have sex.
The sex scene, for me, is one of the, I don't know if it's the first problematic scene. It's very problematic for me. I just felt like that's an odd choice for the makers, but I don't want to dwell on it. I still want to celebrate the creativeness and freakiness of this movie. And CATHY Moriarty is an established actress, so I think we're in good hands. Finding human sausage, having sex with your wife, not deserving of your fresh attitude, but gives it up after admitting to multiple murders. Everybody's pants are down, answering the phone in bed. Not a good look. John, take it away.
They have sex. It's clear that Joan is very confused by what's happening, and I'm assuming would still want to believe that, you know, this could end in some way that isn't, you know, total insanity and disaster. Like
she loves her husband,
but loves her husband, does love Paul very much. But anyway, yeah. So they have sex, and then afterward, they're in bed, and the phone rings, and it is it's Carrie Ann. Carrie Ann hits it. Yep, here's Carrie Ann again. She calls and makes a pretty good little joke, I thought. He says, "Oh, Joan's not here," and she calls and says, "Hey, I'm just calling to say, hey, you know, we're not going to Gone with the Wind. I can come pick up Danielle. Is Joan around?" And he goes, "Oh no, Joan's not here." And she says, "Oh, Joan must have thought I was Gone with the Wind, haha." But which I think is a nice little joke. But anyway, yeah, she calls. This tips Paul off to the fact that Joan knew about this, and Joan knew and was afraid that he was going to kill the daughter. He becomes incensed and enraged by the fact that, he switches like on a dime.
Switches, you're right.
Really scary, and is like, okay, hangs up on Carrie Ann and says, "Nope, Joan's asleep. You know what? I'll just call you back." Carrie Ann sounds confused on the phone. He hangs up on her, and then immediately is pissed off that Joan thought he was going to, you know, hurt her or their daughter. To which he pulls out an enormous knife, like huge knife.
That's a big knife.
Joan with it. Yeah, exactly, right? Pulls out this big Crocodile Dundee knife.
Yes.
With this, like, hooked at the top. It's like the craziest hunting knife you've ever seen. Just so big, shiny, huge, like, foot-long knife. He pulls this thing out, brandishes it at Joan, and then instead of stabbing her, like, screams and, like, leaps past her onto the bed and, like, stabs the hell out of the bed. Just,
like a big baby.
Yeah, screaming and kicking around, and then he starts yelling at her. I think this is when she either runs off or he, like, grabs her, because she ends up locked in this sort of, like, attic storage room place, where he has all of his hunting trophies, so things like boar and deer, heads mounted and antlers and things. We do learn that he used to be an avid hunter, but does not hunt anymore, mostly I think because Joan does not approve of it. But
amazing
so
detail.
She's locked up there with all this. The daughter arrives, or the daughter sees him getting dressed, and what we see him doing is putting on his clothes, putting on face paint, and loading a bandolier with bullets and also duct taping a bunch of dynamite to his torso.
Right. Yeah.
So the daughter sees him doing this.
And I see him doing this. And I say to myself, those are not bongo dogs.
Yeah, the daughter does. Yes, yeah. She goes and talks to the mom and is like, oh, Dad's doing something weird. He's taping hot dogs to himself. She starts telling the daughter Danielle to just leave the house, run out of the house, and flag down the first car that she sees. But Danielle insists on going to look for the key to unlock the room to get the mom to get Joan out of the room.
He's irate. This movie goes to very funnies, like How Did This Get Made podcast, analyzing very scenic scenery we've mentioned, but it also goes to very opaque, darkest darks, which is what happens with his switch. I think we're also mentioning that the daughter, there's this moment where the daughter is she's like in liaison between Joan sort of being tortured by him verbally or in this attic, but he's asking for a sandwich, and I have details of that. And then Danielle, he says bologna sandwich. Go ahead.
With apple spread. He says a bologna sandwich. He asked the daughter to make him a bologna sandwich with apple spread.
Yeah. Not peanut butter, apple butter, top and bottom. And do you know, John, that I am in apple butter country here? If you would like apple butter, I can go 30 feet away and get you apple butter right now.
I think so. Number one, that sandwich thing is interesting. We see that Mike is making his own peanut butter. Paul doesn't want peanut butter; he wants apple butter, which I think is a little bit weird. Could just be a coincidence.
I think so too. I said Paul is Ohio.
Do you think he has the Ohio vibe to him? I guess he kind of does have that sort of good old boy vibe without the sort of southern twang.
Aggro, hateful bro. I see it.
Aggro, hateful. Again, also, maybe not that weird of a sandwich to request in Ohio for me, being from, growing up in like North Carolina, California, and now living in Washington. Apple butter and bologna sounds crazy to me. Sounds like a very weird combo.
Okay. How about after this knife-sized joint I give you, now would you like to have it?
I mean, probably no. I don't even need the joint. I'd probably just try one just to give it a shot.
Yeah.
But always found it to be an odd request.
Odd request. Dan, I'll serve you up here because I got you off track to get you on track. Danielle is able to see Joan through the crack in the walling. That's my word. And that is an incredible shot. And I don't know, that child has large eyes.
Danielle is very intense looking, just as like a kid actor.
Joan's continuing distrust of Paul agitates him into a fury. He locks her up in the attic and dons an explosive vest and face paint. This is just strengthening what John told us, because it is tough to really get, are we seeing this dude dress up and what is he doing? John did a great job.
He also puts his hair in like a top knot.
Okay. I'm with you. It is. There's a lot of detail to what he's doing.
Striking,
Yeah, he's got like a diamond painted on his temple, increasingly unhinged. Paul chases his daughter up through the attic, and minutes after accusing Joan of thinking that he'd hurt my own kid, attempts target practice of her fleeing from him, missing Danielle, but killing their dog, Shasta, which doesn't get a lot of play in this movie, but he is the dog that ate the cookie awkwardly. And we're still in that attic. Joan has noticed belongings and boxes of belongings that I think belong to her, possibly. She sees a box with a peacock coat. I can continue, but you could also stay in the attic with that, John. What do you know? What do you have to say?
So like I'm kind of blanking on the whole attic sequence
Not a
at the
problem.
moment, but
It's not that big of a
like,
deal.
yeah.
It gets better when we leave the attic. Joan has
Oh,
taken
yeah.
a peacock coat and racing in a maroon old Chevy pickup truck, because we don't really know what goes on with the shooting. We see a dead dog, and poor Danielle runs and runs and runs, and thankfully I think the editor is like, that's enough of that. Joan has gotten out, and that's where we're at as far as
Yes,
I
she
saw it.
gets out and starts to flee, and I believe drives away, kind of crashes the car. He's like giving pursuit. I think
Yeah.
they end up in some kind of abandoned facility
And we get
near
there.
this quarry.
We get there with an overview shot of Joan driving, and you're right, Paul driving. The scenery with the villainous thriller action reminds me of Breakdown, a movie we recently covered, John. Shots fired on new movies.
Nice.
Filling us in on where you took us. Thank you. Abandoned copper mine in Globe, Arizona. Joan drives into or under a bridge-like structure. I wish she didn't do that. She's trapped. The abandoned quarry. Here we are. Paul shouting to Joni about boring to the center of the planet. And, like, I think you are going to be... Sorry. Yeah, go for it, John.
This is another great monologue from him where he's talking about digging, and he is taunting her and following her around and stuff, going, ooh, and then he's walking around and he says that we're going to start digging and we're going to go down, and he's just like carrying us with this, like, I don't know who wrote these things or like if it's his delivery or what, but something about it is so striking to me, where he starts saying that they're going to bore, they're going to dig, and they're going to keep digging down and down and down until they hit the like molten rock in the center of the earth, and then he says we can't go down anymore, we're going to start going up. And I thought, it's just it's again like this super manic intense way to talk, but like it is so illustrative and so cool, because it really, I mean, it is what would happen, right? If you dug all the way to the center of the earth, eventually you would start going back upward again. And so it is this kind of like rock bottom moment, but he's like still like fixated on this like ascension and this like greater like thing in life. It's super nuts.
And aren't we...
It really works so effective in like the horror realm of it.
And aren't we as an audience like, okay, like what you're saying with this boring to the center of the earth is that we're also saying, okay, and where are you going with these thoughts? Yes. Your value is based in these thoughts, but where are you going with it? And because to be at a quarry with your goal is probably not where you should be ending up. You know what I mean? Unless you're a demented person or a criminal. Like in the movie Nothing to Lose, which has a quarry scene, and John is the first movie we cover in the new season of the Movie Club Movies podcast. Quarry scene.
This is why I love White of the Eye. It has so much in it that it just relates to like everything. You know, it's connected. It's woven into the world. You know.
I do, and so you mentioned earlier, but at this moment we're getting the completion to some flashbacks, including Mike was out on a hike with Paul in those flashbacks, and Mike watched Paul go psycho on a deer he killed with a knife. John took us through that. Your thoughts continue. Okay. He's on a hike in those flashbacks, and Mike watched Paul go psycho on a deer he killed with a knife. The look on Mike's face after the kiss and spit looks incredible. It's his best acting, his pinnacle. And this movie is heinous and evil. I would like to order an iceberg wedge to calm my nerves with a green salad. Those were genuine thoughts as I watched that. When Paul has a face full of blood and is looking up from the deer, I got a thought of blueprint for contemporary horror thriller.
A24, artistry, mellow beginnings, and then bam, the cashier at the local grocery store is a demonic werewolf. These blueprints that have now emerged in contemporary movies from leaders like A24 seem to have referenced maybe this movie of many, you know, being that we start off calm, and then this dude's full of madness. Have you seen
Barbarian?
I have seen Barbarian, yes.
A24, like you too, is impactful and talented.
I know exactly what you mean. It's...
We're in the quarry, and I just explained that flashback concluded. My smashing moment, John, is when Mike shoots Paul in the legs.
Oh, yes.
And
so Mike shows up. He has this fucking huge machine gun, which is super intense to look at. And he shoots Paul in the legs. It goes slow-mo. Yeah.
I don't have much to say because I was just going to mention, John, that I'm at the end here.
Oh, totally,
and Wiki filled me in. I didn't understand how Mike got there, and we just concluded flashbacks. I'm like, my man Mike is traumatized, but he's our hero for a moment.
He brings it back. Mike tells us in that scene, he arrives and surprises Paul. He has this huge machine gun, this big Thompson machine gun thing.
Is it a Mikey Thompson Baja?
Something. I have no idea if it's. I don't know guns. I think he said something along those lines.
Either do I.
He has this huge, high-powered weapon.
He does.
That he shows up with. And he says that he saw this on TV in his head. And he was convinced that it was real, and he was correct. He seemingly does have magic powers, seemingly does have some kind of precognition, arrives there, marches Paul into the center of this quarry, proceeds to blow his legs off, basically. Shoot him in the legs a bunch. Joan starts freaking out. She starts saying, oh my God, like, what did you do to him? What have you done?
And she wants the gun at a moment.
Yeah, so she gets the gun from him, and then, she's like, this is the climax of the film here. She starts saying, hey, do you want me to shoot you, Paul? You're hurt really bad. And he's like, yeah. Then in the end, he reveals that he has taken one of these lighters from the house and he sets the fuse for the dynamite he has.
And he does it so tricky. He does it behind his back.
Yeah, he does it behind his back and then reveals that he's set the fuse already. Mike and Joan start to try to run away. Paul's able to grab Mike, and Mike tells her, just run. She runs and jumps into this pool of water that's in the base of the quarry. Paul is then, menacing Mike and looking at him and saying, I got my dream. I did what I wanted to do. I lived my life. I put my mark on the world and all this. Mike just lights him up with this thing, with this machine gun as the dynamite goes off, blowing him up in this huge, fantastic explosion in the middle of this quarry, which absolutely awesome. It's like this helicopter shot spinning around, giant explosion in the middle of this crazy quarry. Really, really dope. Joan survives the explosion by virtue of being under the water,
and I just have
falls out.
I just have notes saying explosion. Cathy dives, and then my sort of question. I wondered if you had info. This must be some record-bending explosion. I mean, is it like?
Oh, totally.
I wondered if you were gonna say and that explosion is the biggest controlled explosion on natural land, in America. Because I guess maybe it's not, you didn't mention it, but it's a massive explosion.
Yeah, it is huge.
Yeah,
it is absolutely huge. I don't know if it is some kind of record-setting thing, but really is, super intense when you see it.
You see what I'm saying, a consumer-level record of explosion or something.
This film does not seem like it had an enormous budget.
Right.
Oh my God. It is really, I don't know if they just let him do that or that was something that was going to happen in the quarry. Right. Anyway.
Obviously, making use of the quarry,
crazy.
We're going to applaud. You took the opportunity, you made use. But especially if we get a chance to retrace, or if the listeners hear me retrace the cast, there's one stunt guy, and there's nothing spectacular I found out about anybody. So there's nothing this guy was known for blowing up Las Vegas hotels, but it's that remarkable that I'm asking my friend. There's thank goodness they got a helicopter view. Great views, of course, is how I end that scene. I go to the next scene of our other main man, Charles Mendoza, sits with Joan. John G, are you ready to finish the movie? Am I walking over anything?
The sidewalk ending.
No, I think that is kind of just the next sequence. That's the end right there, right? The next little bit we get is the two of them sitting, I believe, at a diner, speaking about what's happened.
Joan spins a copper penny.
Joan is spinning the copper penny around.
It's kind of a mumblecore moment. I want to at least make mention of this line on my end was blatantly mumbled. I was like, what did she say? She says, I mean, like, CATHY Moriarty, as I've been tracking, incredible actress, seems worn out. I don't think she is. I think she's just given that to the character. She's a healthy individual, as far as I've read. She's sitting there going, everybody's a shithead, right? And I could barely make out the word shithead. I hope you caught it, John G, when I said it here. 10 years gone with the wind. 10 years gone with the wind. Now playing at the local drive-in, I guess. They're talking about, like, her relationship with her husband is gone. The penny is spinning. And I don't mean to walk over anything, John. She says, heads, I go to Malibu Beach.
Heads go to Malibu Beach, tails stay there or something like that? Yeah.
Mendoza stops the penny. What's 10 years? When you're in love.
I suppose so.
I love this ending. And I was trying to, like, I have to, like, say, expressing his love. 1987. This movie has taken us to the left and to the right. And so I was just like, that's the way I see it. ArtEvans, he's a beautiful dude.
This scene's great. He slaps it down. It's a killer final line, you know. Like, what's 10 years when you're in love? That is kind of the point. A big point of the film is that these two people were really in love with each other. She really did love Paul and was just amazed that, I guess, she never discovered this side of him. But yeah, this is where we end off. This is where it concludes.
But I'm saying, I think that Mendoza is expressing his love to Joan. And I'm really serious. Like, I don't see it as a hack job. I think that's the way I took this ending. Am I bonkers? I took it seriously, like, yep, okay. So they're going to get married.
This is the one true pair.
Because he's like, what's 10 years when you're in love? And he's just like looking at her. There's nobody else around. I'll add to my madness. Joan sees Danielle in the diner window. Smirks. Smiles with a sip of soda. Fade out over the city. Joni White.
Yeah.
Angel Spirit of Tucson.
Yeah, that's where we end off right there. As you were saying, the soundtrack, awesome. We get some more pretty dope music here. There is some of this cool, like, thumping, like, heart sound, early electronic kind of beat that we get in different parts of the movie, and I feel like part of that plays at the end here. Just really cool. I don't know. Something about the ending, it feels satisfying. Nothing really feels unearned. For me, I think the biggest thing in the movie that's like the biggest thing to criticize is that it is so ambitious and so weird and non-linear that it can be difficult to follow. It can be a little impenetrable, but yeah, I don't know.
It's approachable.
Where were you at the end of that?
Well, I'm with you. It's approachable, and then you get in there and you go, well, do I want to continue? And I stayed for the visuals. I think what was mysterious to me was the production of it, possibly, because even there at the final Polaroids is like Danielle in a reflection of the diner window, and it just seems like we'll tape that there. She takes a drink of soda, we'll tape that there. I think there's a lot of legitimacy on this movie, but it was interesting to get there and be like, wow, that strawberry colored blood is just so perfect. And then chop, 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 carry on, carry on, hairdresser. And it's just like chop, chop, chop. But who am I to say when my intros to my own podcast are just as choppy, but that's what I like. That adds personality, that adds charm.
Totally, totally.
I was in art classes with you for 4 years. I'm all about that process, baby. So I think I like it. What is going on with Danielle and Joan's soda at the end? The bulging hand clasping over a copper penny. That's the blanks I fill in. And thankfully, maybe I'm on top of things a little bit more than others. So I kind of fill them in my way, right? So that's where I was at. But it was so scenic. It was just like, this is a world, you know?
Totally, yeah. It is kind of its own world, and I mean to the choppiness and sort of the storytelling, it works in an odd way for me because there are
it works in an odd way. It works on an odd way.
Yeah, like there's these sort of two events, two sequences of events that are happening in this film, and it's like it's Mike and Joan arriving in the town and meeting Paul, and then it's Paul and Joan separating after 10 years together, and Mike returning at this end part here, where it's kind of implied he came back there maybe because he saw this sort of happening in his mind after his head injury. But with these two sequences of events going on, if you just told the whole story chronologically, you wouldn't really get those big moments with Paul and sort of his interactions and all that. You kind of need the climaxes of both of these periods of time to sort of line up with each other. So the story being told in this sort of like choppy, like one, like, you know, like past, present, past, present, past, present, past, present, kind of works to that end, because then the climax of the whole film is the climax of those two sequences of events. But yeah, it's definitely really cool. And like I said, this movie, shocking, intense, all this stuff, but I really do think it's got a lot of merit to it. Real quick on the intensity. So DonaldCammell, the director of this film, he directed Light of the Eye. He has also done. So he also did Performance
with Nicholas Roeg and Mick Jagger. Yeah.
Yes, with Roeg and Jagger. I think this was one of his last ones, and he also did Demon Seed. If you haven't seen Demon Seed, check that out.
Cool.
Also really bizarre.
Cool.
But not to go too deep into those. Few things about this dude.
Go for it.
DonaldCammell was briefly, so he studied painting. He was briefly an illustrator, I believe. I actually purchased a copy of a book of King Arthur stories from England that have some of his paintings in them, and they are quite nice.
Incredible. Nice.
Yeah, so I own that, and I bought that after I watched this movie. I started reading about him a little bit. Just want to go into. So I'll just read directly from the Wikipedia on this guy. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, the actress who plays the daughter.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
I think she's playing Ruby.
Yeah. So ChinaKong was his wife. Oh, also this guy was DonaldCammell was friends with Marlon Brando, who I think helped get this released or get
incredible.
Or avoided an X rating. So there's something around that. That's a little bit of a side thing to what I was going to mention about ChinaKong. His wife,
that's fine,
is a writer. Yeah, is a writer and producer. And I guess he started a relationship with her when she was 14.
Oh boy.
Pretty weird.
Boy. Wow.
Ended up marrying her.
Okay, good.
And this is what I wanted to mention here. So DonaldCammell, after his film Performance, I believe after his film Performance was, the studio took it and basically was going to re-edit it. He committed suicide. So he shot himself. I'm just going to read from his Wikipedia. Night of April 24th. On the night of the 24th of April in 1996, Cammell shot himself in the head in his Hollywood Hills home. It looks like two articles about his films here. It says he took 45 minutes to die, during which time he talked about his movie Performance, which features Mick Jagger's character being shot in the head in assisted suicide, with his wife, ChinaKong, asking her to provide him with a mirror so that he could witness his own death.
Whoa. Continue.
Yeah. Friends told the press he was suffering from severe chronic depression. Cammell's depression reportedly was exacerbated by the studio's recutting of his recent film Wild Side without his permission. So, super intense moment there, but also hauntingly kind of adjacent or connected to this film White of the Eye, in which Paul, when murdering Lisa, holds a mirror up to her face while she's drowning so that she will witness her own death.
Wiggle, Lisa, wiggle!
Yeah, so super intense. Not a fun note to close out on, so I hope we have some more to talk about. But
we can close on another dark note. That's okay. There's others to choose from here.
There's plenty to pick from. Yeah. So very, very intense, I guess, end of life. Yeah, she wrote Wild Side with him.
I have one more writing anecdote, but I don't mean to talk over you if you were going to close out.
I was going to say that despite that happening around, was it Wild Side?
Yeah.
Wild Side, I think, eventually did get, maybe it was performance. I think Wild Side did get a director's cut release.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
With ChinaKong working along with the editor to release it, I think sometime around 2000. But yeah.
Find it at your local library, perhaps.
Yes.
Let me add that I found out, John G., that the writing was based on a book entitled Mrs. White by a Mrs. Margaret Tracy. Do you believe that? Because Margaret Tracy is a pseudonym of Andrew Clavin. And this dirtball is a dirtball. We don't have to continue on him necessarily, but I wanted to add what him as Andrew is credited to have written a movie titled One Missed Call from 2008, starring one of my favorite actresses, Shannon Sossamon, in a rare feature role. That's all I want to talk about from that dirtball. But I didn't want to walk over what you were talking about. We can talk about the cinematographer if you'd like.
Yeah.
Or
yes, let's talk about something. Andrew Clavin does seem like kind of a scumbag.
Yeah, I'll put my foot on the accelerator and skid out by saying the cinematographer is Larry McConkey, who, funny that you are a great audience for this because you are aware of all these dirtballs in terms. He did a documentary, Tyson, from 2008. And he also he worked on An Imperfect Murder from 2017, starring one Alec Baldwin. These two movies are made by director Toback. And in 2018, the Los Angeles Times reported that 395 women, that's more than one per day for 1 year, had accused Toback of sexual harassment or assault over a 40-year period. Toback denied all allegations, and in 2022, 38 women filed a lawsuit. That was just my intention to research a cinematographer that knocked this movie clean out of the park. His other work is Colossus, a documentary about Sonny Rollins, Black Wax, a documentary about Gil Scott-Heron. I'm beside myself as I laugh and celebrate this contrasting catalog. I'll conclude on this. A music video for the 1983 hit single Dog Police by Dog Police off the hit album Dog Police. This movie was produced, and you could put all your blames on Elliot Kastner. And please, look up his catalog of work. This movie, more importantly, was edited by Terry Rawlings, because I think they did a great job. They worked on Alien, Legend, FX, one of my favorite movies, and Yentl with Streisand. He edited this movie, and those are like Those are the icebergs. This dude did not work on shit. It was crazy to see his catalog. John, I already wanted to celebrate you when I contacted you at the beginning of this podcast. The music is done by Nick Mason and Rick Fenn. Even better, set direction by Richard Rutowski. Do yourself a favor. Letterbox him. Look at his profile photo. You tell me if he did or did not work on this movie. Smash that message button. Costumes designed by Meryl Green. This amazing person worked on Savage Dawn, 1985, Witchboard, 1986, Are You Sitting Down? Hell Comes to Frogtown, 1988. And she completed a gold standard career with a movie titled The Last Prostitute in 1991. I applaud her. Hell Comes to Frogtown is radical. This movie was worked on by creative people.
That's amazing. I had no idea there was a Hell Comes to Frogtown connection with this one. Also a huge fan of Hell Comes to Frogtown. One of the best ever.
Do you want to hear the cast?
Yeah, let's run down the cast.
Like I have, the stunts are by Dan Bradley.
I do know that
DavidKeith might have been who you were thinking of.
DavidKeith is who I was thinking of. DavidKeith, still kicking out there. He has quite a filmography. He had quite a television career too. He was on an episode of Arliss, which is a show that I feel like has kind of been lost in time. But he's in that. He's in some Law and Order. He was also in Indian in the Cupboard as the tiny cowboy.
Yes, Boone.
Weirdly enough, he is also in the 2003 Daredevil movie starring Ben Affleck, where he plays the character Daredevil's dad, who was a boxer.
Mr. Devil?
Mr. Devil himself. something Murdoch. I think Jack Murdoch.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so prolific career, all sort of smaller bit parts. I can't really think of a movie, another film I've seen with him in a big starring role. Oh, he's also in an Ernest film, too. Ernest Goes to School.
The only one I had
Ernest fans,
was The Two Jakes. The Two Jakes.
Oh, The Two Jakes. Okay, yeah. That's the sequel to Chinatown.
Yeah. Interesting. CATHY Moriarty plays Joan White. She is 26 in this film. I don't usually care about an age. I'm not trying to be a creep. I'm literally saying she was 20-ish when she was Oscar nominated, and I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and she's playing a housewife doing a damn thing. She's not 46 or 36. She's 26 in 1987. She's from Raging Bull, Oscar nominated. She's also from But I'm a Cheerleader, and everybody is suggesting that movie to me.
That is a good one. You should check that one. I was going to bring that up if you didn't mention it.
No,
but yeah.
I knew that you would, so we should cover that on the episode.
Yeah, totally. That should be a future episode. Yes.
Kindergarten Cop is something I watched recently, so I was like, what was I just watching her? She reminds me of Virginia Madsen, early and blonde, and Kathleen Turner for her confidence and brass. Alberta Watson plays Ann Mason. She was Linda in Hackers. She was in a movie, I had to pull the title, 1979, Stone Cold Dead.
Stone Cold Dead. Wow,
and then everybody's favorite, Mike, played by AlanRosenberg. AlanRosenberg is in Freaky Friday from 1995. He's also in Happy Birthday Gemini, 1980. He's in After Midnight from 1989. On a personal note, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild during a time I was living in Hollywood, and kind of getting a union card and being a part of that industry was like an everyday question, just because I was such a free spirit and artist skateboarding around Hollywood. ArtEvans, we already mentioned, played Charles Mendoza. He was also in CB4. He's in so much else. I mentioned David Cho as Fred Hoy. We mentioned Stu. Mimi Leiber played Liza, Liza, Lisa Manchester. I don't know if I literally pressed the button on her. I had her name down though. Pamela Guest played Carrie Ann.
That kind of wraps it up right there. Just add that, once again, I think the performances in this film are great. I think there's a lot going on in each one of these actors, what they're doing. Honorable mention to Stu. Excellent performance there. What would normally just be a little bit part. This film has a lot of care taken in all parts of it, which is really impressive to me. It feels very well thought out, even if it's a little, it's a little intense, a little crazy, a little rambling, a little manic itself. There is something there. I think it's interesting that my man who played Mike went on basically to have probably one of the more prolific careers of people in here. But yeah, it's a really dark, sort of evil, haunting film, but it is really engaging and genuinely really beautiful. I think in some of the visuals it presents.
I agree. I picked a smashing moment, and I didn't necessarily pick a character actor or character choice. I'm gonna go with Stu, Marc Hayashi, and then I don't know where to go with that, except I was just like, what a quirky a quirky personality of a character. But we talked a lot about him. I mentioned my smashing moment being Mike shooting Paul. Let me ask you, if you could, and you could share, do you have a smashing moment? Do you have a character choice or character actor selection or something like that?
Totally. I mean, I'm going to have to agree with you. If we're not going with the main cast, it's got to be Stu. Stu rules. He is so great. His delivery is hilarious with his, good old boy country twang, being a Asian guy in his 20s, describing his big mudding truck, the way he's powdering himself, all those little silly moments make him just a very charming, lovable guy whenever he walks in on screen. Really engaging, immediately stuck with me. And in terms of a smashing moment, man, there's so many. The one you chose where Mike shoots Paul in the legs, super insane. I might have to have it go between either that hunting sequence that goes way off the rails. That really blew me away.
Yeah.
Or that whole Lisa murder with the flipping over, that POV, that crazy, crazy bathroom that they're in.
Yeah, and he literally smashes her on the top of her head. That
is a smashing scene, yeah. But I'm going to have to say between either the ADR montage gossip sequence or
the hunting moment?
Yes, the hunting sequence. Yeah, the hunting sequence where Paul rips the head off the deer, or the ADR gossip sequence. I think kind of a tie between those two for me. They're both just so alarming. There's something about the way that scene with the deer and the hunting is framed with the sky behind them.
Yeah.
Looks super vibrant and dramatic. But that ADR sequence just so fun, so cool, so just well put together. I really just dig it.
Yeah, I almost want to call one the smashing moment, and the other could be the stew, the stew choice or something like that. Name it after Stu or Marc Hayashi as
Stew Award. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, John, I want to give you a moment to plug anything you got going on.
Yeah, so
you're a pro.
I'm kind of between contracts right now. So I'm not really at a certain place, but if you'd like to see my artwork, my visual artwork, you can find me on Instagram at enchanting_stranger. Yeah, if you want to go check that out, I have a link to my big cartel with some stuff that I make on there. Prints, I have a tarot deck, some books. I'm going to be having a lot more books soon, probably come November. I should have some stuff done. Fingers crossed. But yeah, check me out online. You can see where I'm doing. And once this hits, I'll be posting about this there.
Great. And I'm going to post links along with the episode. Thanks for coming on. I think I would love to have you come on again whenever you're free or would like to.
Oh, totally 100%. I could come on, talk about a whole bunch of stuff. I watch, stuff like this all the time, or at least I try to. I recently watched a movie called Darklands, also on Shudder. If nobody has Shudder, that's probably my favorite streaming service. It's got a lot of films from the 80s, 90s, a bunch of 70s films on there as well, which is kind of my favorite sort of era. But yeah, Darklands is on there. That's like a sort of, if you can imagine, like The Wicker Man, but in Wales. And like a Welsh Wicker Man that is like industrial goth punk from 1996.
And the
Super
Welsh
badass movie.
Yeah, the Welsh can get abstract.
Yeah. So check out Darklands. Eyes of Fire is something I watched recently as well. Great film there. And another English film, The Shout, is something that I've been a little obsessed with recently too. The Shout is pretty crazy. I won't really go too far into it, but I will say, basically the plot is a man shows up at this remote house where this couple lives. A love triangle situation starts after this guy says or claims that he has some kind of Celtic ability to magically shout and destroy or kill things just by yelling at them, basically. So really trippy, really bizarre movie, very small, very low budget, but I will say the best part of The Shout is when he shouts.
I'm out of notes. That's it. But John, before we ramble ourselves out of here, let's get out of here. Like always, please be kind. Please rewind. Those slashed Mickey Thompson Bajas.
Mickey Thompson Bajas give him an out on this. He just looks at it all and he goes, weird. Weirdly enough.